Hey guys, welcome to the channel Morgatones. I thought it would be a great time to do an introductory video introducing myself along with my violin journey. So I also apologize. I was trying to do this video at a park, but I kept getting visitors and it got really awkward. So I came to my car. But I wanted to kind of explain some of the stories that I've had playing the violin and my journey from the day I started until now. So I have been playing for just over 10.5 years. I've been playing since I was 11. I am 21 now. So when I was in 5th grade, I was at school and we had an assembly, and it was the local middle school coming, and they had some students from the orchestra come and perform for us. There was 2 violins, a viola, and a cello. They wanted to bring a bass down, but they're a little bit too big to transport. So they performed some pieces. I can't remember off the top of my head what they were, but they performed some and it brought me some interest. And just some back history, at that time I didn't know how to read music. I had no previous interest in wanting to learn the violin or any sort of instrument like that. So I went home and I talked to my mom and I said, hey, I want to learn how to play the violin. And understandably, she was caught by surprise. I had no previous interest in wanting to learn the violin or anything like that. So she was like, you know what? This is great timing because we're going to your grandparents for dinner tonight, and your grandpa used to play the violin. And I'm pretty sure he still has his old violin. So why don't we go over there and ask? So I went over there, and my grandpa brought out his old violin, and he played 2 pieces for me. He played Mary Had a Little Lamb and Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. So he had sat down in his recliner, and I stood in front of him just watching. And watching his facial expressions, he just had the biggest smile, but at the same time, he was crying tears of joy, just showing me what he's performed. And he told me, he made a promise with me that I kept. He said, and I quote, as long as you practice and as long as you work hard every day, you can keep this violin. But once you stop practicing, I want that violin back. And from that moment on, I knew that I had made a promise to my grandpa that I didn't want to break. So within a few seconds, I grabbed that violin, I went to my grandparents' music room, and I just tested it out. I didn't know how to do any of it. I mainly just did open strings, and a little later my mom came in to check on me, and she's like, why don't you try putting fingers down? And I was like, I don't know how to do that. Every time I tried doing it, it just made a squeaky noise and I didn't like it. Thinking about it now, I don't think I pressed hard enough on the strings, so that explains it. But so later that night we went home. We went like a week of me just doing open strings, and I started doing violin lessons. My mom hooked me up with a local violin teacher in my local hometown, and we started doing violin lessons. She taught me how to hold the violin, how to hold the bow, how to care for the violin. And then she started teaching me how to read music a little bit. But the very first song that I learned was Turn, Turn, Turn. It is a piece that my dad actually taught me. He plays guitar, and so he taught me how to do that. And it was all open strings, so I didn't have to do any fingerings or anything like that. And so I thought that was really cool. And then the first piece that I learned from doing violin lessons was the can-can. It is a very popular piece. It's a good piece. It's also very popular in my family. Every Christmas I perform different pieces for them, and they always request the can-can. So one day I was learning how to do the can-can, and I was at home and my mom was at work, and I was struggling quite a bit, and I just needed some assistance. So I called my mom on our wall phone, put her on speaker, and I was like, hey, can you listen to this and tell me if this sounds right? And as you know, it did not sound right, okay? Every second I could, I would do an open string because I hated doing the fingerings at the time. And so she sent me the recording of my violin teacher playing the can-can just so we could go off of that. And she helped me figure it out pretty quick. It took some time, but at least we were on the right path until she could get home and off work later that day. So, moving forward, again, this is 5th grade. The first day that I got the violin, I remember this exact date. It was March 20th, 2015. And don't ask me how I remember that, I don't know. But so I continued doing lessons with that lady. She started teaching me out of Suzuki, and then she ended up moving. So I've had many teachers past that. I believe I've had 8 violin teachers. We're not going to go into major detail about all of them. That would just make this introductory video way too long. But we'll skip forward until December of 6th grade. So I believe that was also 2015, maybe 2016. I don't have the dates exact from beyond this point. I ended up performing at my sister's wedding. She did not know that I was doing it. We kept a secret from her for probably about 4 months. And I performed at her wedding. We did a duet with one of my sister's friends. It was of Canon in D major. It's a very popular wedding song, and it was great. And that was only like a year into me playing. So then fast forward a little bit of 7th grade, my mom and I went to a youth orchestra concert locally, and we listened to it, and I was like, I want to do that concert. And she's like, well, maybe when you're a little bit more experienced you can. So I went to school that next day, and there was flyers everywhere for it. So I took a picture of it, and there was little slips that I could take that had a name and a phone number on it. So I took one of those slips, I went home, showed my mom. And so she's like, all right, well, we'll message this person and we will get this set up. So she messaged this director, which later was one of my violin teachers. She messaged him, and we got it set up to where I would be auditioning for this youth orchestra within the next couple weeks. So the requirements were you had to be at a minimal book 3 of Suzuki, and you were able to play 2 scales, both 3 octaves. And at that time, I was still in book 2 of Suzuki. I was just learning how to do the 2nd octave, so I was pretty behind, and it kind of got me a little defeated. But I was like, let's try it. So I talked to my mom about this, and she's like, well, maybe just try learning one of the first pieces in book 3. So I pulled it out, and they were really hard. For the level that I was, I ended up actually wanting to quit violin at that time. I had a lot of moments where I just didn't want to keep going. But my mom kept encouraging me, my violin teacher kept encouraging me, and we practiced really hard on one of the pieces in book 2 of Suzuki, and we practiced a bunch of scales, 2 octaves, and she's like, well, if you don't get in, it's okay, you can try again next year. So coming to the time of the audition, I did the audition, my mom recorded it, and at the end, he told me that I made it in. And I did a happy dance. I was jumping up and down, spinning in circles, hooping and hollering, so excited. So I made it into that youth orchestra within 2 to 3 years of me being able to play the violin. So pretty early on. And I was a part of that youth orchestra from, I believe, 2018 up until 2022. So like 4 to 5 years. And that was really cool. And within all this time, from 6th grade up until I graduated high school, I was in school orchestra. There were some ups and downs. When I first started in 6th grade, I had already been doing lessons for a few months, and I was technically a year ahead of all the beginner students because they had me in the beginner class. So they were just learning how to read music, and they were just learning how to do Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. And at this time, I had already passed off all the variations to Twinkle Twinkle Little Star and I'd moved on. So I got pretty bored over time. But moving into high school, since the orchestra in middle school was, more for beginners, I didn't know anything. I felt pretty lost most of the time, but I quickly caught on. And by the time my end of my sophomore year, beginning of junior, I was first chair, second violins, which if you don't know, that means a section leader. So I was in charge of teaching my section how to do pieces when we had sectionals, and being up front and being the leader. And that was really cool. I lettered in orchestra all 4 years that I was there for high school. And I had been practicing, and during that, I had a dream of becoming a better violinist than my grandpa was. So after every little performance that I did for my family, I would ask, am I a better violinist than grandpa? Do I know more things than grandpa? And sometimes they say, no, not yet. But after a while, they're like, yeah, you're a lot better than your grandpa was. And that right there just kept me going, saying I can become the biggest violinist that I dream to be. And granted, I have not reached that dream yet, but I have come a long ways. I loved doing violin. I loved performing for my family. And it was kind of like a stress reliever. Whenever I had a bad day at school, I would come home and I would just play my violin. There's a lot of work that needs to go into being able to play the violin. There's a lot of work into hours practicing. Like, you can learn new things every day. So coming to the graduation of high school, I continued to play violin, and I graduated high school, and within 2 weeks I had moved out to college. So it was a quick, fast-paced thing, graduating high school, then quitting my job, and then packing everything up, moving. So I didn't really get to practice much within that 2-week period. And then another week within settling into college, getting everything figured out, getting school figured out. So up until then, I kept practicing as much as I could. It got to a point where I wasn't able to play my violin with my bow at my apartment, because I had a few noise complaints. from some people. So I would go over and I would practice my violin at my sister's houses when they lived in Low. So about August, maybe September, probably August of 2024, my sister asked me to play her down the aisle. So I was like, yeah, I would love to. So she chose a piece. It was Sleeping at Last. And I was able to play her down the aisle. We worked on that, and that was great. I loved every second of it. So I kept practicing, kept learning new pieces, kept learning more things. And it was beginning of March, my other sister called me and she was like, hey, would you like to play at my wedding, whether it's me down the aisle or whether it's at my reception? And I was like, yeah, of course. And then I was like, so I kind of have a secret. I was already planning on playing my violin at your wedding, but I was planning on keeping it a secret. And my brother-in-law was actually on the phone. I was on speaker, she was on speaker, so on and so forth. And he was like, Morgan, why did you tell her? It was funny, it was great. I ended up playing her down the aisle as well. I played Canon in D major, just a different version of it that we'd created. The same piece that I played for my sister back in 2017-ish. So that was amazing. I had some great opportunities. I also ended up traveling with the youth orchestra a couple times to Salt Lake to play at Abravanel Hall and be performed at a few places in Salt Lake all around Utah. We also traveled to Toronto, Canada, and we performed there. So I played a whole bunch of places around Utah along with in Canada, and the school also gave me an opportunity to go to Hawaii and play at the 80th anniversary of Pearl Harbor and play at the parade. And I loved that too. That was a great experience. Those are some of the experiences that I will probably never forget. But it came until just recently that I had always had the dream of wanting to compose my own violin music, wanting to become a violin teacher, and wanting to just conquer some more of my dreams. So it was probably late July, that I finally made the step, and I reached out to some of my previous violin teachers that I still have contact with. I messaged 3 of them, and pretty quick I got a message from one of them. She gave me a phone number to a local composer in my hometown, and she's like, reach out to this lady. She's really good. I know her, and she is more than happy to teach you. And so I was like, oh, cool, thank you. I actually messaged her over Facebook, but she hasn't responded yet. And my violin teacher's like, reach out to her over phone or text. She'll respond much quicker. And I was like, cool. So I reached out, and I got a quick response. It was kind of like she was waiting for me to message her. She knew. I don't know. Maybe she didn't, but it felt like she did. So I was actually getting ready to go to bed for that night because I had to work early that next morning. And she asked if I could do a phone call with her. And I was like, of course. So I got on that phone call, and she told me, she's like, when you just start fidgeting around on your violin, record it. Do a voice recording. And do that for however long you need. 6 months, a year, 2 years, however long. And over time, you'll have a bunch of little mini recordings, and all you have to do is you have your piece done. You just have to put it on paper. And so I was like, okay, cool, thank you. And she gave me some links to some software that I could download and get that all done. So she's like, please let me know if you ever need help. And I was like, deal. Thank you so much. So that phone call lasted probably 15 minutes. And at that time, it was pretty late for how long I'm used to staying up. And I had just a bunch of adrenaline. I was jumping up and down in my room trying to stay quiet because my roommates had just gone to bed. And I called my mom, and they were just going down to go to bed. So I called her, and she's like, what's going on? And I was like, this happened. And I told my dad as well. They were together. And they were like, oh, that's really awesome. I'm so excited for you. So within, like, I told all my family pretty quick. I can't keep secrets. For those of you that know me, you know that. So it was probably a week later. I get a call from my sister, and she was like, hey, I'm wanting to do a podcast, and I need introductory music to it. And I'm asking if you would like to compose it and to help me out with that. And I was so happy, so excited. And I was like, yes, of course. I was like, so it's not going to be like a couple hour thing where I'm going to be able to have it done in a couple hours. Like, I'm going to need a little bit of time, at least 2 weeks. And she's like, that's fine. She's like, how about a month from now? And it was late July, and I was like, okay, so how about the end of August? And she's like, that sounds great. And I said, okay, I will get this done as soon as I can, and when I figure it out, I will send it to you. So within a couple hours, I had most of it written down, and then I worked with my composer to finish it out. And I ended up finishing it, getting it to her on time, and now I'm starting all of her podcasts. So I find that pretty great. But after that, I continued to work on my new composition, which I had just released about a month ago and published. If you haven't seen it already, it is Woodland Fairies. I have the piece right here, actually. Go listen to that. I also have a new version type of Woodland Fairies coming out within the next couple days. So I'm hoping to get all that done. So that is kind of my journey of playing the violin, learning how to do it, the history of when I started learning, why I wanted to learn. So I do have another piece coming out soon. Due to some things going on with me getting a new job, it has been delayed, and I apologize for that. But it is Halloween themed, and I'm filming this right now on Halloween. Which is why I kept getting visitors, because people are starting to go trick-or-treating. But I am hoping to continue to progress in my compositions, and eventually I'm hoping to be able to do full orchestra symphony compositions, which that's going to be many years down the road. But for now, I like to start simple and kind of move up from there. So if you would like to continue following this journey, I would greatly appreciate it. Please share this with your friends, family, neighbors, your dog. I don't know. I would share things with my dog if I could. But thank you all so much for watching this video. It is definitely a little bit longer than I was hoping for, but that is okay. But stay tuned for more pieces coming up, and thank you all so much. Bye-bye.